In early 1938, the United States Navy began exploring innovative ways to design battleships that could match the speed and capabilities of its own aircraft carriers, while also outperforming the swift and heavily armed Japanese battleships, which were seen as a major threat at the time. This led to the Navy's Bureau of Construction and Repair developing several design proposals. From these efforts emerged a new class of powerful warships known as the Iowa-class battleships. These ships represented the pinnacle of American battleship design and marked the end of an era, as they would become the final battleships built for the U.S. Navy and the last of their kind to remain in global naval service. Though the original blueprint called for the construction of 6 Iowa-class battleships, only 4 were actually completed and entered service. These were the USS Iowa, USS Missouri, USS Wisconsin, and USS New Jersey. The USS New Jersey, affectionately nicknamed Big J, was formally commissioned into service in 1943. During the commissioning ceremony, Captain Carl F. Holden offered a poetic prediction, saying the ship would be a lovely lady who will have her angry moments. That description would prove to be accurate, as the ship would go on to experience more combat in World War II than any of her sister ships in the Iowa class. The 1940s, however, were just the beginning of what would become one of the most distinguished and enduring careers in naval history. The USS New Jersey was ordered on July 1, 1939, and became one of the 4 completed ships in her class. Over time, while her secondary and tertiary weapon systems evolved in response to changing battlefield requirements, her primary weapons remained the same. She was armed with 9 16-inch 50-caliber Mark 7 guns housed in 3 triple turrets. These formidable weapons were capable of launching 2,700-pound armor-piercing shells with devastating force. Originally intended to carry 117 officers and 1,804 enlisted crew members, the battleship's complement eventually grew to over 2,700 personnel due to the addition of extensive anti-aircraft weaponry during the war. The USS New Jersey was officially christened on December 7, 1942, exactly 1 year after the attack on Pearl Harbor. During her launch, she slid into the river stern first, briefly touched the shores of her namesake state, and was then towed to a dry dock to complete the installation of her main gun turrets and upper deck equipment. Meanwhile, her crew began arriving to familiarize themselves with the ship and its complex systems, preparing for the dangerous missions that lay ahead. On May 23, 1943, the battleship was officially commissioned into the U.S. Navy under the command of Captain Carl F. Holden. She was deployed to the Pacific in early 1944 and saw her first combat during the Marshall Islands invasion, an operation aimed at establishing strategic airfields and naval bases that would support future campaigns across the Central Pacific. From that point forward, the USS New Jersey played a significant role in virtually every major amphibious invasion from 1943 onward. Her operations included engagements in the Marshall Islands, New Guinea, the Caroline Islands, the Marianas, the Philippines, the Palau Islands, Iwo Jima, and Okinawa. The ship also twice attacked the Japanese stronghold of Truk, the Empire's key naval base in the South Pacific, and took part in the only surface engagement involving Iowa-class ships, teaming up with the USS Iowa to sink fleeing Japanese warships. The New Jersey bombarded multiple enemy bases and frequently served as a protective escort for aircraft carriers, particularly during air raids on Japanese-held territories, including the first large-scale carrier raid on Tokyo. During this operation, her gunners managed to shoot down 20 Japanese planes and kamikazes, while also rescuing downed American aviators. Among her most notable contributions were her roles in the 2 most critical naval battles of the Pacific Theater. In the Battle of the Philippine Sea in June 1944, widely regarded as the largest carrier battle in history, the USS New Jersey helped create a formidable wall of anti-aircraft fire and was instrumental in decimating Japanese naval aviation in what became known as the Marianas Turkey Shoot. Just 3 months later, she played a key leadership role in the Battle of Leyte Gulf, the largest naval engagement ever fought. Although the battle stirred some controversy, it effectively eliminated Japan's navy as a credible fighting force. USS New Jersey also holds the distinction of being the only battleship to serve as flagship to both of America's greatest admirals during World War II, Admirals Raymond Spruance and William Bull Halsey Jr. In her capacity as part of the Navy's main fleet, She took part in numerous campaigns, including the Battle of Formosa and invasions of Peleliu, Leyte, Mindoro, and Luzon, while also supporting operations in the South China Sea. Among the Iowa-class battleships, the New Jersey clearly emerged as the standout, earning more battle stars and enduring more action than her sister ships. After the war ended, she was used to transport thousands of American troops back home. Following World War II, large battleships were increasingly seen as obsolete in a changing world where naval warfare was dominated by aircraft and submarines. Consequently, the USS New Jersey was decommissioned in 1948. Yet unlike many other warships of the era, which were scrapped and dismantled, the New Jersey and her sister ships were preserved in reserve, seen by the Department of Defense as assets that might be needed in future conflicts. That opportunity came just 2 years later. In 1950, when North Korea invaded South Korea, the United States responded quickly under United Nations authority. Despite being initially unprepared, President Harry S. Truman ordered American forces stationed in Japan to reinforce South Korean defenses. The USS New Jersey was called back into service to provide heavy artillery support from the sea. On November 21, 1950, under the command of Captain David M. Tyree, she was recommissioned and returned to active duty. She arrived off the coast of Korea on May 17 and once again assumed flagship duties when Vice Admiral Harold M. Martin of the 7th Fleet raised his flag on her. Just 3 days after her arrival, she began her first shore bombardment in Korea at Wonsan. Her massive 16-inch guns reached targets far beyond the range of land-based artillery, and her ability to move at high speeds between firing positions allowed her to deliver powerful, precise strikes that disrupted enemy supply lines and communication networks. She was also ready to defend aircraft carriers if needed and was highly praised by naval officials for her extraordinary performance. Throughout 2 tours of duty in Korean waters, the battleship was regarded as an essential part of the Navy's mobile artillery force, delivering accurate and effective firepower wherever it was needed. On her final mission in July 1953, she concluded another chapter in her illustrious career. The battleship destroyed numerous North Korean positions, including bunkers, caves, trenches, and large-caliber gun emplacements. Just days after these intense bombardments, the war came to an end. After her service in Korea, the ship was decommissioned and they entered the Reserve Fleet, commonly known as the Mothball Fleet, on August 21, 1957. There she remained inactive for more than a decade. As the Vietnam War intensified and American aircraft losses grew alarmingly high, the Pentagon looked for ways to maintain firepower without risking pilots and expensive planes. On May 31, 1967, Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara authorized a study to explore options for reducing these losses while still delivering the required levels of ordnance. The result of that study came a few months later. In August 1967, McNamara approved the decision to recommission the battleship and assign her to the Pacific Fleet. Her return would increase naval gunfire support in Vietnam and offer a reliable, low-risk method for bombarding enemy targets along the coast, regardless of weather or time of day. The North Vietnamese military, aside from tactical aircraft and some torpedo boats, had little that could pose a real threat to such a heavily armored warship. New Jersey was particularly suited for this mission, as she was in better condition than her sister ships and had undergone significant maintenance and upgrades before her last decommissioning. She was officially brought back into service on April 6, 1968, under the command of Captain J. Edward Snyder. As part of her reactivation, the ship received another round of modernizations, including advanced electronic systems, a helicopter landing pad, and weapon enhancements to improve her effectiveness against targets in Vietnam. On September 29, 1968, she arrived off the coast of Southeast Asia. The very next day, after more than 16 years of silence, her massive guns roared back to life as she unleashed 29 16-inch shells at enemy positions near the demilitarized zone along the 17th parallel. During her deployment in the region, she operated along the Vietnamese coastline, offering powerful fire support that relieved pressure on American tactical air forces. The battleship and her crew responded to direct requests for fire support from multiple American units, including the 101st Airborne Division, the 1st and 3rd Marine Divisions, and the 173rd Airborne Brigade. Between September 1968 and April 1969, New Jersey fired a total of 5,688 16-inch shells and nearly 15,000 5-inch shells, surpassing the combined total she had fired during World War II and the Korean War. As expected, the ship was never seriously damaged or directly threatened by North Vietnamese forces. Once again, the mighty vessel had fulfilled her role with power and precision. After completing her Vietnam tour, New Jersey returned to California in anticipation of a second deployment. But to the surprise of her crew, plans had changed. Instead of returning to war, the ship was scheduled for another deactivation. Even with an all-volunteer military, it was financially unsustainable to maintain a crew of 1,600 for a ship whose role was no longer deemed essential during peacetime. Balancing the ongoing Cold War and the drawn-out Vietnam conflict proved too costly, and so in 1969, the proud warship was decommissioned once more. She remained inactive until the early 1980s, when President Ronald Reagan launched his ambitious 600-ship Navy program. This initiative aimed to rebuild the U.S. Navy after years of post-Vietnam downsizing. It was a major element of Reagan's 1980 presidential platform, designed to counter the military power of the Soviet Union by restoring American naval dominance. All 4 Iowa-class battleships were selected for reactivation as part of this plan, and they were each modernized with updated weapon systems, electronics, and communications equipment. New Jersey was rearmed and re-equipped to address the evolving threats of the late Cold War. In the years that followed, she would once again be called into action, this time in Lebanon and the Persian Gulf. But by the end of the decade, the global political landscape had shifted. The Cold War tensions began to ease, and the justification for keeping these enormous ships active diminished. Eventually, New Jersey was decommissioned for a fourth, and this time, seemingly final time. Of the 4 Iowa-class battleships, she served the longest, with over 21 years of active duty. This was more than 2.5 times longer than Iowa, 5 times longer than Missouri, and nearly 10 years longer than Wisconsin. She also stands as the most decorated